We begin in Uvalde, Texas, where a long-awaited report into a deadly school shooting has been highly critical of the police. It found what they describe as a cascading failures of leadership, decision-making, tactics, policy, and training. When the gunman burst into Robb Elementary School in 2022, hundreds of police officers rushed to the scene, but it took more than an hour for them to confront him. And in that time, the gunman murdered 19 students and 2 teachers. That delay sparked outrage among the victims' families and across the U.S. more widely, and it prompted the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate, producing today's report that runs 600 pages long. The U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland visited families in Uvalde, and he said the victims and survivors of the mass shooting deserved better.
The law enforcement response at Robb Elementary School on May 24, 2022, and in the hours and days after, was a failure that should not have happened. We hope to honor the victims and the survivors by working together to try to prevent anything like this from ever happening again, here or anywhere.
So it was another deeply distressing day for the families of all those who were killed. Let's hear from some of them who commented after seeing the report.
It's hard enough waking up every day and continuing to walk out on these streets and walk to an HEB or drive to an HEB and see a cop that you know was standing there while our babies were murdered and bleeding out. It's hard enough that. But this community doesn't care, and I hope this makes y'all.
I hope that the failures end today and that local officials do what wasn't done that day, do right by the victims and survivors of Robb Elementary, terminations, criminal prosecutions. And our state and federal government enact sensible gun laws, because Robb Elementary began the day an 18-year-old was allowed to purchase an AR-15.
Well, our North America correspondent, Emma Vardy, she told me how the report had been received by families.
It made really emotional reading today for the families of the victims. Hundreds of pages in this report. Failure after failure was laid out in black and white. As for any changes, well, the city of Uvalde says that there have already been changes in procedure and better training for officers. But what families are calling for is for officers themselves, the ones who were most culpable for those mistakes, to be held accountable. And there is also a criminal investigation which is has been going on alongside this, and there is the possibility that charges could be brought. Families have also said they want to push for resignations for the police officers who made the greatest mistakes that day. And what was really highlighted in this report was one of the biggest errors, which then led to such a long time passing before they actually entered the classroom and apprehended the shooter, was that they arrived on scene, and instead of going into the classroom where there was a gunman active, well, instead they assessed the situation and believed that it was somebody had barricaded themselves in, and they didn't identify this as a gunman who was active. And if they had, then the protocol would have been to force entry to a classroom to apprehend a gunman as soon as they could. But that didn't happen, and that left these students and teachers trapped inside the school with this active gunman. And some 77 minutes passed with police outside from when they first arrived to when they actually apprehended the gunman. So these are all criticisms and failings which many victims' families knew about already, but they've really seen it laid out very clearly today, and all those missed opportunities where they potentially could have saved lives.
And Emma, we heard from the U.S. Attorney General as well as the victim's family that those guns belong to the battlefields, not in schools. But has this actually brought up that debate again over access to guns among lawmakers and the U.S. public?
Yes, it always does after every mass shooting, and this was one of the worst in US history, with 19 children killed. A statement after that report came out today came from President Joe Biden, saying there need to be stricter gun laws to help prevent this type of mass shooting in future. But it is an argument that you see that cycles around again and again when these tragedies happen.